ensuring that it's not something which is ruled by the outside distractions like the outcome expectations, but it's process driven. Yes, you want to achieve your desired results for yourself, and the individual who wants to achieve those big milestones. But it's a journey. It's a journey through different games, up and down. Sometimes questions are asked from there, and if you are able to answer those questions rightly, being front on, so be it. But if you are able to ask those questions being side on, so be it. Bottom line is, right-hander or left-hander, you need to understand the consistency of your bat swing, the downswing which comes down, knowing where your off stump is, understanding the mode of dismissals which you want to take charge of. I would advise that start off having your foundation strong, and then build on it. That's definitely something which I have backed, and I would like to be backed by the youngsters. But the methods around it, not necessarily you have to get locked into the technical side of it, but more importantly to understand that how your understanding of the movements of lower body versus your upper body, how you are able to sync that together. So my advice to the batters will be not to overanalyze, but at the same time be smart enough to understand when you have done well, what are the things which you have done well. And seam, spin, everything, let's understand one thing. Bowlers, when they bowl the ball, when they release the delivery from their hand, the fuller length of the delivery which comes first to you. So in your setup, are you getting yourself ready with your triggers or setup, whatever you're doing out there, are you keeping yourself ready for those fuller length balls? But that's what you want to pick from your hand. And that is where actually you are able to see and get all your cues. After that, it's all about reaction. The other mantra which I do a lot and I advise a lot to people is routines, processes, and mind.
Cricket Love Stories with me, Neil Kagram. Today we're joined by Monty Desai. Monty, how's things going?
Things are pretty good on my end, Neil. How are things on your end?
No, pretty good as well. Summer's here in the UK finally. So I appreciate your time. You're currently the West Indies batting coach. How's that role going before we kick off?
Very satisfying so far. I think, almost coming to an end of 2 years now. And the good thing was that I was involved in all formats. And I like the purest format as well, which is Test cricket. I think we all can say that in the last 1.5 years, Test cricket is something which has got its position where it belongs. And I have enjoyed thoroughly.
Good to hear. Now, you're going to give us some batting tips and advice for all budding cricketers. So before we just dive into specifics and the actual in-depth crust of it, what is just a high-level question, what are your main philosophies when it comes to coaching batting?
Good question. And I think before we go into the philosophy around coaching, the whole journey is all about life. So for me, it has just started very early in my life. And I've learned one very important lesson, which is always look for good and great things in life and see if you can bring out some of those good things and great things into your own journey. So that's where it starts for me. And, before getting into also batting philosophy, I think what is important to understand is what is my coaching philosophy. And I am a big believer in a happy dressing room. When I say that, it's all about the environment which you build around your setup, whether it's the academy, whether it's the team which you have involved in. And then the learning automatically takes place because there are a lot of players who already have experienced certain things. And when they all, you open up that environment where they can all discuss peer-to-peer coaching, coach to players coaching, then it automatically brings in a lot of knowledge. And then that knowledge can be utilized nicely for their progress. If I go break it down even more towards the batting philosophy, I keep using this word, one ball battles. And something which I relate to my own personal experience in my early days when I wanted to become a cricketer. And I come from the suburbs of Mumbai. The Maidan cricket is something which has taught a lot to us in Mumbai. And in Maidan cricket, you have 25 games on one single big oval where, you are completely switched on. We have learned to be in present for those one ball batters on the field, while batting, while bowling. So For the batters, what we have realized is that some of those surfaces are so challenging that you need to be completely switched on. So being present to that one ball battle. And then we always encourage bowlers, let's say in the preparation when their batters are getting ready, uh, for them to ask the right questions to our batting unit. And we always encourage our batting unit to embrace all kind of challenges which you come across, the scenarios, the surfaces, and the skills from over the wicket and around the wicket. So for me, to sum it up, the one ball battles is all about being consistent, persistent, ensuring that it's not something which is ruled by the outside distractions like the outcome expectations, but it's process driven.
How much importance does mindset play in a batsman or batswoman's game, whatever level they play?
I think it's very important, and when they play, you're talking about the mindset it starts right from preparation. So a mindset of when you're walking into your nets, which is going to be the start of what you want to achieve in those battles out there, in the real battles in the game. And you need to bring in the right kind of mindset out there, the right kind of attitude out there. You break it down to what you want to achieve as you get into the net sessions, in that mindset. Are you trying to progress towards your attacking side of the game? Are you trying to progress towards your defensive side of the game? Because overall, all these important things which you're trying to learn technically or tactically, or sometimes it's just about looking at the temperament side of it. It all correlates to the mindset which you're talking about over here. Then you're thinking about, when you're prepared well, the true reflection of your mindset is your approach in the game. You must have prepared for certain things and you walk into the game and suddenly you realize that you come across some surprise questions out there from the bowlers, or the surface which you were expecting to be batting friendly it has not turned out that way. And do you have that mindset to adapt and approach and adjust to those challenges as well? So I think mindset is very important in everything that you do.
You mentioned process before, mindset here and now. Is it all about, in our game as a batsman, it's almost seen, if you don't get 100, it's almost seen as a failure. Is that just something that you almost need to block out of your mind, and just when you talk about process, talk about the way you want to play the game from a technical perspective, how you want to play certain bowlers, the way you want to score runs? Would that be fair to say?
It's very fair to say. And I think, you talked about hundreds. And again, I can correlate that to the way we were grown in Mumbai. Mumbai cricket at that point, I'm talking about, I must be 12, 13, early 90s. The expectations of scoring hundreds, it's inbuilt out there. But at the same time, we need to also understand that you do not achieve 100 on ball one. It's a process of also the number of balls which you face, different formats. The importance of process goes in for one, what technically also you're trying to progress to. Okay, so let's say you want to become better at your drives. And in the training sessions, there is a certain process which you're following for that as well. Certain part of the levers which are not complementing to your drives. So you break down that process. You create some mini process around it. Your top hand is not complementing your drives. And then you break it down to just having a process of constantly just working with your top hand and training towards it. Then able to see that progress through a process where suddenly now the bowlers are bowling in the nets and challenging you with some good balls, but you also get one or half volleys in between. Because you're process driven, you see an automated process taking over, and you see those wonderful drives which you have been able to achieve in the nets. And same thing happens in the game. So there's a lot of relevance to the process, and I don't know what else we can actually talk about over here, but people need to understand the importance of process with everything. Thinking process which you talk about as you approach the game, and to ensure that how you're building your innings, the tempo. If you're in the middle of a chase and you know that you have an important role to play out there, you curve down from playing some aggressive shots, and you ensure that your thinking process is such that you manage that tempo slowly, and you look for the right opportunity to pounce on when some weaker bowlers are going to come, that is also a very good process, because you are smart enough to understand that there is one bowler who's going to be a weak link from the opposite side, and you will wait for that weak link and just ensure that you are managing the tempo in batting partnerships out there with your partner, which progresses and helps you to reach there. Sometimes the process is all about being smart to be be that second fiddle player out there when you know that your partner is scoring runs freely. And it gives you the time to ensure that you get in the game properly. That is equally a very important process. Sometimes just the aggressive mindset which you take it in the game when you have your team has lost 3 or 4 early wickets, but you bring in that aggressive mindset on that day, and you create a small process of attacking early on and then building a tempo again. So it's got a lot of importance, Matt.
So is it important to go into every innings with a game plan and that ability to adapt given the match scenario?
Very much, very much. And look, the ability to dive into your role, okay, because the importance, it's a team game. But then also the reality is the challenge is between two individuals. The bowler who is asking you different questions out there, and as a batter you are responding to all those questions from different angles. So making sure that yes, you want to achieve your desired results for yourself, an individual who wants to achieve those big milestones. But it's a journey. It's a journey through different games, up and down. Sometimes the failure also will come in between. Sometimes you'll score some leap of runs straight away. But you ensure that you're process driven, where you're articulating certain things in appropriate way, making sure that what is working for you, and also analyzing smartly to see what are the areas in your wagon will you want to get better at. Because the process of understanding your offside game versus leg side game, okay, the smartness of your game plans, where certain things are working in your favor on the front foot and certain things are not working in your favor in those 6 to 8 meters good length areas out there.
If we focus on batting technique next, in your opinions, there's been a lot of debate about it, which I've seen. Is batting a side-on or a front-on game? And do you believe one or the other allows the player better access to the ball to line it up better? What are your views on that subject?
So, having walked into different dressing rooms, having worked with few individual players all around the world, I think we need to be open to all approaches. And yes, it started off even with us early on in our life, where it was always instilled in our mind that it's a side-on game. But as you keep on watching more and more players who have been creative, some of them mavericks out there, we need to be open about the fact that the individuality comes into play a lot. Okay, and talking about technical, then again the clarity around those individuals who knows that, okay, which part of your body is actually helping you to score runs, and at the same time which of your levers are actually helping you to play those solid defenses. Look, the questions are asked in that narrow corridor from the other side. That's a reality. Bowlers, right arm bowlers, left arm bowlers, the spin, the seam, all those questions are asked from those narrow corridor. So no matter what, the first approach is thinking straight. And for that thinking straight, is it your body a little more front on, which is helping you to approach that nicely, being aligned out there? Is it the side on, which is allowing you to think nicely? Because thinking straight, and from there you expand your game. The questions are asked from there. And if you are able to answer those questions rightly, being front on, so be it. But if you're able to ask those questions being side on, so be it. Bottom line is, right-hander or left-hander, you need to understand that consistency of your bat swing, the downswing which comes down, knowing where your off stump is, understanding the mode of dismissals which you want to take charge of is important. So whether it's side on or front on, if you are able to answer those different questions put to you as challenge, and skill versus skill challenge from the bowlers, back yourself.
You talked about knowing where your off stump is. Does a lot of that come from the guard? Again, a lot of debate that I've seen, especially in the UK, a lot of batsmen moving on to off stump. predominantly in the county championship, which we've seen in the English summer. What are your views on that? Any advice you can give to youngsters? And is perhaps the most important thing where the head position is at time of ball release?
Uh, it's a very, very good question. Okay, and in the modern world, even we get challenged as coaches. But again, our approach is a lot more rational because we do not. The coaching is also about not instructing things. It's the participation with the player. So we need to understand what is his rationale behind wherever he's standing on the crease. And a couple of informations which I have come across is that when the batsman is standing on middle and off stump, okay, he is thinking about taking care of the balls which are swinging away. So he is able to actually be aligned for that when he's able to pick those swinging balls early enough from the release point and able to take that decision in his control. He is able to command that. He's also mindful about the fact that from there, if the ball swings in, is what you need to be watchful about. Because middle off guard, most of the times what people are saying is the LBWs have come to play a lot. And it is a fact. But if that batsman, that individual, and is able to cope with it, is able to get his bat swing down in time and not let the ball hit the pads, then it's something which is helping him. So you can back that. And there are certain great players who have done that. But at the moment, we also need to be careful about who is trying this, because on the television, you will see that and you want to apply that straight up. My advice to the youngsters especially will be explore starting off by being on leg stump guard. And I'm purely talking about now grassroots level players who are trying to develop that game. Because you need to get clarity first from standing on leg stump and understanding what is working for you. Stand on leg stump, because the technical side of it is that you stand on leg stump, your head gets aligned nicely. Still remember, those questions are asked sometimes from wide of the crease. Wide of the crease, again, you're trying to move your head towards that. And when it's a left arm bowler, then again, you're trying to be a little more open in your stand. So those are challenges which you need to be mindful about. And again, when you're having that partnership with your coaches out there, a right kind of communication and conversation will help you to understand that. But going back to the leg stump guard, and then understanding that if your offside game, you're able to manage nicely, and then challenging yourself and experimenting those middle stump, middle off guard, things like that. No, we know that tactically, even against off spinners, when they're turning the ball into you, players prefer to stand on middle off, because now the ball is turning into you. You can play it with the turn on the leg side. But the other reality is that if you stand on leg stump, and I'm now talking about as an example of that off spin, if you stand on leg stump, you can also work on your game for those balls turning into you against the turn, where you are able to pick those lengths early, slightly short of good length, and then you're able to pounce on that by picking that length early and pushing back on back foot against the turn, able to hit those gaps on the offside. So all those theories comes into play. It's a very, one thing about our game is that there are a lot of variables to look into, but you need to bring in that simplicity of just first working out on one skill challenge against you with whatever guard you're taking, and creating an understanding around your game. Bottom line is knowing your off stump, where it is.
As we said at the top, you're currently the batting coach for the West Indies. You've also coached in the IPL. So you're probably one of the best people to put this question to. With the advent of short form cricket, a lot of flamboyant shots have come into the game. For an up and coming player, what advice would you give them in terms of embedding that traditional fundamentals of batting in their own game versus practicing those trick shots, those power shots that you see in short form cricket?
Forget about the IPL. I mean, that was another great journey out there, scouting and looking out for those talented players from different part of the country. But even in the nets, look back at 10, 15 years down before, even in the nets, sometimes if the player plays an aerial shot, the coaches will get upset out there and he'll talk about why did you play in the air. Sometimes those rules of playing the air in the net and you have to get out of the net. And some of those young batters were frustrated about it because they wanted to have that freedom. So understand that the foundation is important. Understand that if you want to score big runs, scoring methods and having that mindset of attacking mindset of scoring runs, yes, you have to back that. but attacking mindset and attacking shots along with that, not to forget the importance of defense, because it's one ball at a time. And some of those good balls, how are you coping up with that? It is very important that with the modern world where it has progressed to now even T10 format, some of those youngsters, and we are trying to advise the youngsters out here, is that it's not straightforward. Okay, but at the same time, if I have to reflect back to the unstructured methods back in my time in Mumbai, we had this rubber ball, tennis ball event in those on the streets, and people used to play shots. So all that has been there for a long time. I mean, it's just that we have been able to see that even more on the television because of the formats which are a lot more now we've seen from the professional leagues around the world. I would advise that start off having your foundation strong, and then build on it. That's definitely something which I have backed, and I would like to be backed by the youngsters. But the methods around it, not necessarily you have to get locked into the technical side of it, but more importantly to understand that how your understanding of the movements of lower body versus your upper body, how you are able to sync that together. That is critical. And once you get that understanding, your stroke plays around it. Once you get the understanding around the stroke plays, opening up your wagon wheel, understanding, is the cover drive going well? If the cover drive is going well, what is that is working for you? Understanding your straight drives, understanding your back foot drives. So all those shots which you're talking about, break it down and understand that properly. Understand the technical side of it properly, how your front half of your body works and how your back half of your body is complementing with that. So those are the technical things which you want to learn and get solid on that and then progress from that.
Do you think sometimes players are guilty of over-analyzing and overthinking technique? What are your views on the subject of batting technique in terms of the way you think about it, the approaches? So sometimes if you're out of form, you hear in the commentators, a player's got a scrambled mind. They don't know where they're going in terms of head positions, feet, etc. If a player is struggling and overthinking their technique, what advice would you give them in terms of mindset, approach, and almost kicking themselves back into some sort of form?
So look, I hope that I'm able to justify this because this is one of the most challenging thing which batters comes across. Okay, and first advice from my side to all the batters who are trying to progress to the higher levels will be that, do you look into your performances when you've done well? Okay, and when you've scored those runs, do you try to reflect that? Do you make notes of that? Do you ensure that the analytical mind also is looking into that? Because sometimes you might be lucky to score some runs through the aerial route, not necessarily that you decided to do that. But then if you can reflect that and understand and get better at it. Over-analyzing is not good for anyone, we know that. Okay, but ensuring that some of those dismissals are those relevant to little more technical work, it is important. When you do it, how you do it, that is also very important. And also understanding your personality. If you know that you can do that slight little adjustment quickly, then work on it. Because I've seen some of those players who are proactive about it. They like to get a little bit of tactical advice and they're able to apply that straight away in the next game. But at the same time, let me give an example of certain players who score big hundreds. Okay. In the first 10 balls, 12 balls, 20 balls, they're trying to get in. And when they're trying to get in, sometimes their front foot slightly comes across. And that incoming ball hits the pad first, is given out. Certain days, the same ball which is swinging from the same spot, the foot is still coming across, but he's invariably able to get his bat in time around his pads and play that ball well. Okay, so now the question to him will be, is it my concentration or is it my technical abilities which is lacking over here? And only that individual can answer that. If it's something which is happening over and over a period of time, then you know that, okay, you want to do a little bit of changes out there. But I've seen a lot of players who are able to play the bat around their pads nicely, even to that incoming ball when the front foot is just slightly going across and managing it. So the question then remains that, even as a coach, do you want to advise to change that? because he's able to find a solution to that. So my advice to the batters will be not to overanalyze, but at the same time be smart enough to understand when you have done well, what are the things which you have done well, and articulate that and make a note of it.
You gave the example of swing bowling, that if a player is struggling to line up a ball that is swinging, seaming both ways, what suggestions would you make from a technical aspect, from a mindset perspective, and what can that player be working on in the nets to develop and improve that side of their batting?
Okay, so let's break down that question even more. Swinging, which are fuller lengths.
Swinging, seaming. I'm thinking about English
Right.
conditions, a player coming overseas.
Right.
Never foreign conditions, not seen that ball before. Even if a clubby from the UK is perhaps looking at this, you come over overcast conditions, balls moving both ways. What advice would you give a batsman that's struggling against that?
Well, if you're struggling in the match, you know that he's walked into the match without a game plan. But let's say that swinging conditions, you again need to start off with one game plan in place for an outswinger as a right-handed batsman. One of the things which has worked, and I'm just giving it as an example, is that as a right-handed batsman against an outswing, if he's thinking to play an on-drive, it sets himself nicely to see that swing, and then if the ball is in his corridor, he can play. Otherwise, he can leave those balls. Okay, as a strategy, not necessarily you're committing when on-drive, but it allows you to understand swinging away ball, cutting away in that training sessions, cutting away the cover drives, because you know that if you try to swing away ball, if you're going to play a cover drive, you're going to get nicked. Now, if you're struggling, you need to break it down to certain things like this, and then train around it and see what is working in his favor in terms of his footwork. Let's say in terms of his footwork, he's half and half in the crease, and those good length balls are still beating him. He needs to be proactive to see, can he stand slightly front of the crease and not worry about a short ball, because he's still able to see that short ball and probably duck and play around it. So cut down some of those things and create a solid plan around the most important skill challenge which you come across, and then build on it. Okay, to elaborate even more, how close you're playing to your body. If the lens are those kind of lens which you can easily leave even over the stumps, have you analyzed that part of it? So swinging conditions, but swinging conditions with a little more bounce, where those good lens are actually going to go over the stumps. So you need not bring your bat for every ball. You need to bring that thought process around it. What are the balls which you can easily leave, and create that concentration around it. And then slowly build that innings around it. Through the net sessions, like I said, prepare out there and see if you're able to get some better outcome in the games. Maybe you may not get the end result straight away, but even small progress from whatever you have done in net sessions, one-on-ones with the skillful seaming bowlers out there, and then progressing it in the game and getting some better results, you know that you can now develop your game even more better on that part. Technically, I have come across certain players where, if they have ensured that their top hand, if they can control it nicely, and I'm talking about also the work of how your top hand works and how your bottom hand works, which means how much you're pushing your top hand and how much you're holding your bottom hand on the handle nicely to create that angle of the bat, to drop the ball down nicely. Even if the edges, if you're playing with soft hands, is it carrying versus the hard hands, which carries nicely? You need to create those small little informations around your sessions and see the progress in the outcome which you get in the games. Again, being process driven.
If a player is then struggling to pick a spinner, what advice would you give them? Watch the hand much more closely, read it off the pitch, play slightly differently in terms of playing it more off the front foot press and then going back. What advice would you give a young player that's struggling to pick a spinner?
So seam, spin, everything. Let's understand one thing. Bowlers, when they bowl the ball, when they release the delivery from their hand, the fuller lengths of the delivery which comes first to you. So in your setup, are you getting yourself ready with your triggers or setup, whatever you're doing out there? Are you keeping yourself ready for those fuller length balls? Because that's what you want to pick from your hand. And that is where actually you are able to see and get all your cues. After that, it's all about reaction. Okay, you don't get enough time. But through the bowling arm, if you're able to pick the length, that's the first thing which you're winning. Okay, so being stable at the crease, and able to concentrate. Like I said, if you're doing triggers, do your triggers at a time where you're again ready enough at the point of release, so that you can pick those lengths early and then play the ball late. Okay, so pick the length early, play the ball late. That will allow you to move with the ball nicely. So if I don't know if I can give you this example out here, I'm not on the ground, but let's say from the side, if you see, okay, and I pick up a lot of things from the side. If this is the bowler and this is the batsman, as he releases the ball, okay, spinner, as he releases the ball and where you meet makes a lot of sense. Okay, makes the difference out there. So the release and meeting at the right point, and you play the release, it's holding in the air, he pulls the length back, and you are able to press front foot out there and move with the ball back. There's a rhythm to it. And great players do that every time. Their movements are so much in sync with their ball release and the speed and the rhythm that you can see it's like a flow together. That flow you need to bring it. And that constantly comes from one of the old style of training back in India we used to do was not net in the nets, but outside when you have a partner who just constantly gives throws to you, slow throws to you, and you try to move with the ball forward and back. That will allow you to understand the rhythm, and then you will be able to do a better job with that. So picking the length is a lot about from the release point.
We talked about at the top about mindset, game plans, etc. What advice would you give a player in terms of constructing a big innings, in terms of staying mentally fresh from a fatigue, fitness point of view? You coach at the highest level. What kind of stuff are the top players doing? What discussions are you having with them? And any nuggets of advice you can give a young player perhaps watching this on that subject?
One ball battles. I'll go back to that first. And concentration as a tool. One of the most essential tool I say is concentration. Do you know to concentrate well? And do you see sometimes getting distracted? If you can understand that, that will make a difference. And the other mantra which I do a lot and I advise a lot to people is routines, processes, and mind. RPM. Batters have certain routines in between ball, and that allows them to gradually progress towards their innings, and that allows them to be in now, be in present for long periods. So some of these youngsters who are looking for that advice, I would say that create a game plan, and stick to that game plan for long period, and then ensure that the challenge which you face out there, be very specific towards what shots you can play. Many will be able to see that they play some, when especially I'm talking about when they fail in some of those innings, they play some shots which they must have not trained enough in the net sessions, and they can honestly reflect that. So you need to be able to bring in that thought process out there in the game. That okay, let me stick to what has worked for me and the training which I've done. So if you're able to do and apply that part, and if you fail, it is okay. But if you're able to put in to practice and what you have trained in the net sessions in that one ball battle in the game, you will see it's working or not working for you, and you just build on it.
Preparation, is it the key to go into practice with specifics that you want to work on? You see a lot of club players just go in, have a hit for 20 minutes in a net, and then not get the result on the weekend. Is it still going into every practice? Is the key going into every training session with a purpose?
Very much, man. First question yourself what do you want to achieve, and I would also suggest. In fact, not suggest. I would question what is your deepest identity. If you want to be someone at the top out there, then you need to also connect to the reality. And because once you connect to that reality, that okay, this is what I want to become, there is no point going to the net sessions out there without purpose. You need to go with purpose out there. Some days thinking about that I'm not going to get out even one single ball. Many a times, not only in the club levels, I would say I've seen it at highest levels as well. At times, we know there is a debate between a bowler and a batsman, if he is out or not out. I think if that person, and I'm now talking purely about batters, if those batters can challenge themselves and be critical, self-critical about certain things, you don't, you will always ensure that you have achieved something from each and every net session. Purpose is one big thing for me when it comes to preparation.
It's a fascinating subject. We can talk all day on it. But just to end on, if a youngster came to you for your best piece of batting advice, what would you give them?
When youngster comes to me, I would say first advice would be that this game itself, be unconditional to this game, and then when it comes to batting, I think you keep working on bring the better version of yourself every single time. So work with a lot of purpose out there, ensure that you're progressing. And once you know that you're progressing, stay on that journey for a longer period. Be that person who wants to be working on with a champion attitude, but on a learner's journey.
Perfect, Monty. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And all the best for the weeks ahead. So thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Good luck to you as well. I'm seeing that you're doing a good job with this one.
No, perfect. Appreciate your kind words. So Neil Kagram, Cricket Love Stories, Monty Desai. Thank you.